I'm Christy Sturdivant, and today I want to talk about the energy that flows through the Human Design channel, Gate 3740, which is commonly called the channel of community. Now, this is a very important and prominent channel in my personal human design because I've just learned a lot from it recently, and because I have been working with it so closely, I wanted to share my insights and thoughts on it in hopes that it will help someone else. Channel 3740 flows between the ego heart center and the emotional center. And it is on a tribal circuitry, which means that the energy that flows through this very much impacts the way we see and how others feel about us. Those who are close to us in family or in work or in the community, close relationships or whatnot. This channel very much feeds off of that and sends out our energy to that. And because this is connected to the emotional center and the ego center, it's very important because your ego or heart center is what you would use when you are sending out your desires in an energetic sense to the universe. It's kind of what triggers inside of you what it is you want out of life or on this physical plane. And your emotional center is going to, in this case, be your authority, because if you have this defined, your emotional center will be your authority. And that is how you make decisions. You're making your decisions in this world based on your emotions. So this channel is very powerful because it's taking your desires and feeding them down to your emotions, and they're just going back and forth and back and forth. Now, in my personal design, this is very impactful, but also kind of strange because I am what is called a triple split in human design. And what that means is that I have several channels in my design that don't quite connect to each other. So I have a channel over here, specifically my channel of community, and I have my ego center and my emotional center chatting it up, doing their own thing, but it doesn't connect to any other part of my design. And then I have another area over between my throat and my splenic center that is chatting away, and they don't talk to anybody else either. And then I have another channel or line in my human design that does its own thing too. So it's a very interesting aspect of human design because I have many defined centers, but they don't quite connect and talk to each other. So sometimes it feels like I have almost three separate voices in my head or in my body telling me to do something and making my decisions based on what my emotions are feeling or what my instinct is telling me, or the pressure that I have in my sacral center just like pushing me forward. So it's very interesting because I can kind of pull from a lot of different perspectives and feel a lot of people's energy to complete these channels. But when trying to make decisions in my life, it can kind of be a little bit frustrating because nobody's talking to each other. So in this specific case, my channel of community is off over here doing its own thing, living its life. And because it is off doing its own thing, if I don't make sure that I'm in someone else's energy, it can almost burn out in a sense. Now, this has happened to me twice in my life, and that is because this particular channel is driven by two gates that are connecting to each other. So in your emotional center, you have gate 37, which is typically known as the gate of family and friends and everything, but it's also the gate of boundaries. Those boundaries that we need to set up for our lives in order to, live normally and not break down emotionally or spiritually or energetically or whatever. And then my ego center, the gate 40 that it connects to, is the gate of aloneness, which is kind of a paradox, right? it's interesting that my gate of family of friends would be connected to the gate of aloneness, and it makes up this center of community, or this channel of community. So this particular channel has also been very significant for me personally because it hits in my astrological realm in my north and south node. So my south node is in the channel 37 of friends and family, and then my north node is in gate 40 of aloneness. Now we'll get back to that later because that's also a very interesting aspect. But my channel has been working in overdrive lately, and I've learned a lot from it over the years. And it mostly has to do around boundaries in various aspects. So I'll share with you that in my late teens, early 20s, I was very anxious about everything in the world. I was very easily stressed. I came from a family that, although very supportive and everything, very much encouraged the idea of people pleasing and not stepping on anyone's toes, and, you know, just that, I don't want to say emotional gaslighting or anything, but it was very much like, this is your place, don't make that person mad, be cool so that this person over here doesn't get upset, and so we can all get along because we are all supposed to love each other because we're family, right? And so very early on, I learned that it wasn't safe to really speak up. I didn't feel comfortable expressing my thoughts, expressing my opinions, expressing my emotions in any way because I was so worried about everyone else's feelings. And so this all came to a head, lovely, in my very early 20s when I was getting ready to move out and get married, because I was so used to pleasing everyone else that I couldn't feel what I was feeling in my body. And it resulted in this severe reaction in my body to anxiety and stress that landed me in the hospital twice until they realized that it was anxiety induced. And I couldn't really deal with it and come to terms with it until I physically moved away from where I grew up to be alone. And that is part of my channel, or my gate 40 of aloneness. See, what I've noticed recently is that my gate 37 is all about family, and if I'm not in alignment and listening to my emotions and setting up personal boundaries, then what I'm doing is I'm allowing it to completely knock me out of alignment. And the only way to even sort of get back in alignment is to be alone in my ego, to reset, realign, and realize what my desires were. So that was my first time. I didn't realize what was going on until very recently when it happened again. After I got some physical distance from my family and was able to integrate more of what was going on and start really feeling my emotions, I started going off and doing my own thing, right? And I have always been able to find jobs in every place I've ever lived, which was really nice. And I would always start any job I had with, you know, as full force, gung-ho. I would be a really high achiever and I'd feel really good about everything, but I would start feeling energetically misaligned very, you know, and usually in jobs, right? But I was never able to pinpoint exactly what it was until I later learned that this channel is also about energetic contracts. So unintentionally, what I was doing is I was putting forth some unknown expectation on my jobs or my situation and expecting it to go one way and putting all of my energy towards that, but it not being fulfilled in the way that I had either anticipated or what was set out for me. So because of that, I would tend to go really hard in a job, and then I would almost overnight become extremely dissatisfied because something would shift in me. I would not desire to be where I was. I would want more. I would not feel satisfied doing what I was doing because it was not in alignment anymore. And I kind of tended to flame out at my jobs, unfortunately. And it was all because of this energetic contract, which is it's a very big deal for me. And I didn't even realize it until recently, but I go into most relationships or jobs or situations like being open to what it could be and not putting any major expectations on it. But I do need that balance. I'm a Libra. That's very Libra of me. I need that balance. So if I do something for you and you say, I'm going to do this for you, and then you don't do it, it feels very, very off for me. And that can also throw off my channel. But it also leads me to be dissatisfied, which if you are aware of human design at all, you know that dissatisfaction is the worst thing for a generator because it automatically means that we are out of alignment because we are not following what our sacral is telling us to follow. And that has been one of probably my biggest hurdles, being a triple split definition, but also just listening to my emotions and following my emotional flow. It's much harder for me to do that sometimes unless I can get into someone else's energy and connect that to either my sacral center or my splenic center to understand what's going on. So this also results in me talking it out to people, because when I talk about it to other people, it usually helps me connect that energy as well. So I tended to, I leave jobs very dissatisfied, even though maybe 6 months before I loved it and it was the best thing ever. But as I'm going through and I'm working more with this channel, I'm realizing that part of the reason that I was flaming out was because I would put all my energy towards this tribal channel, trying to advance my job or, help someone out or please them in some way and be a really good employee. But I was never taking that time to step back and integrate it through my channel 40 and kind of check in with my ego center and, make sure that it's still what I wanted. That's the thing I've learned about this channel, and specifically for me, since that doesn't talk to anybody else, is that it's imperative that very, very often I check in and say, are we still satisfied? Do we need to shift something to make this more manageable, move us into that satisfaction? Or do I need to set up some boundaries to help me get that alone time? Or do I just need to cut my losses completely because this isn't going to work anymore? So it's been a huge, big growth thing. And very recently, this channel kind of smacked me down again, because for the last couple of years, I have been spending a lot of time going inward and really reflecting and looking at myself and my part in this whole big universal scheme. And I've been diving really deep into the universal laws and human design. And, I can see how I can see my part in the whole big situation and where I went wrong and where I should have zigged, where I should have zagged. And I really wasn't taking the time to kind of step back. I was just kind of consuming information. I was working with mentors or healers and just getting all of this extra energy from all these extra people inside of me. And because I wasn't giving myself any time to be alone and integrate and kind of step back, I burned this channel out again, unfortunately. It was very different this time. Last time in my 20s, it was a mental thing, right? I was super stressed out, landed myself in the hospital. This time, I've done so much work with my subconscious and my mind and everything that I actually physically burned myself out. I injured myself and had some issues that resulted in like 3 surgeries in 6 months, and it like required me to take a step back from everything to actually let my body heal. So that is not the ideal situation ever. You definitely want to be listening. You definitely want to be listening to your emotional authority and your ego center, and especially if you have this channel defined, you want to make sure that you're taking care of it and you are setting up boundaries and giving yourself space so that you don't burn it out. Because the one thing that I have really learned with all of this is that the universe will give you many chances to course correct. It always has your back. It always wants what's best for you. It's throwing lessons at you, throwing things in your path so that you can grow and expand and learn. But if you're not learning it, it's gonna smack you down, as it should, right? Because sometimes that's the only way we can learn these things. But you know, it's also rough because, you know, sometimes the ways the universe smacks you down is not always pleasant and can sometimes be very painful. So anyways, that is what I have learned recently from my channel 3740, the channel of community, the channel of contracts, the channel of bargains. These are all things that when I think about them, I really feel like it connects a lot to the law of compensation, or the law of sowing and reaping. Sometimes I think without even us realizing it, and it comes very often in our families and in our jobs, we give so much of ourselves and we give so much energy to something, either by physically doing something for those that we are working for or people that we love, and then we think about it and then we feel something about it, and so we're just constantly giving this energy to them, and if that energy is not reciprocated, or we are not taking time to integrate what lessons we're learning from that energy, then it can be really bad. And that's kind of what the law of compensation is. It's formerly known as the law of sowing and reaping. You put out this energy into the universe, and it's always going to flow back to you in some way, but it's not going to flow back to you in the way that you expect it always. So it's really important to kind of take a step back and look around and, you know, look at your bruised ego and say, "Ooh, yes, I shouldn't have done that. I should have pivoted here. This is where I went wrong. You know, I didn't handle this right. I should have set up this boundary here." It's a very interesting thing. And for me personally, this channel falls in my north and south node placements astrologically, which is all about learning from past karmic experiences and moving forward correctly in the future, which I'm doing now. So I just wanted to share that right now because I think that it's been coming up a lot for me recently, and this is one of those channels that when I have been doing research on it, it really confused me for a long time, because despite me having this channel of community, I always felt that I was very much an introvert, and I've never really been able to build up this community around me. And I think it's because of that gate 40 in my ego center, because I almost have to pull people towards me, but then like push them away and take a step back. And then realign, is that okay? And then pull them towards me again, and then take a step back. So if you have this channel defined and you relate to any of this, this might be why. At least that's what I think. So hopefully that'll help someone out there, because this channel of community never felt like a channel of community for me. But now I understand why it is so integral and why it is so important to take care of it and pay attention to it. And, you know, really, I know boundaries are a super important thing and people talk about how important they are, but it can like literally mean something will manifest bad or not so great in your life if you don't take care of that, so that you can learn this lesson. So take that as you will. If you like this, please hit like and consider subscribing to this channel. But until then, I'll see you later. Thank you.